All right. All right, let's do this again. We've been having technical difficulties. It seems like the home buying process, as difficult as it is, technicalities and technology is also very difficult. So I'm gonna introduce you briefly, and then we're gonna go into it. All right. So this is take three. We apologize again to the fans that are listening to this broadcast, and we hope that take three would be sufficient, and we would continue to do this as smoothly as possible. So we're gonna go ahead and get started
Are
again.
you able to paste them together?
To paste,
Like, can you take what we did on the first one and then
yeah,
paste this one together with the other one?
yeah,
Then
I
let's
should be
just pick up from you asking me about the home buying process, and we'll just roll.
okay. All right, so go ahead. Let's pick up where we left off. I was asking you, say I have $400,000 and I came to you, Alan, to invest on the first time me being a home buyer. What are some of the things that I need to know, and what do you tell me when I come to you with $400,000? I want to buy my first home to protect my equity and also my family.
Great question. So here's where we'll start, and I'm glad you entered in a value of $400,000.
Right.
But let's make it broad for everybody because the process is the same for everybody, unless if like you're paying cash and you're on $1 million list in New York. For everybody else, is the same process. It isn't like that. So here we go. The first step is you want to build the correct team for you. And what I mean by team is you're going to find a realtor and also a lender that you trust and you value their opinion and their guidance because they're going to be your professional guides to home buying. And it's never too early in the process for you to contact these two different people and start to ask some questions and to get some guidance to put you on the right path. So your realtor is actually, if you don't have a lender, your realtor can set you up with a lender. And if you don't have a realtor, well, right here where we're watching. This
That's right.
guy's this guy's a realtor, right? Reach out to me, shoot me a message. You guys can call me, and Johnny has all my information. He'll set it up so you guys can reach out to me. And whether we're working together or not, like I don't mind you guys shooting me questions. It's not a problem. I love to help. So you're gonna build your team, your lender, and also your realtor. The second step is your finances. So you have to get a good gauge for what your finances look like and how those relate to the home buying process. So you got to know your credit score. It's very important. And if your credit score isn't strong, there's credit repair companies out there, and there's little bits and pieces that you can pick up from your lender of what to do to improve that credit. And please, please, please do not be that person that has credit cards, but you don't use them or have a balance on them because then you're not building credit. You can easily go out to the grocery store, which you do once or twice a week, put all that on the credit card and pay it off right away. And then you're not paying any sort of interest on that money that you used, but you're building your credit. You have to keep that in mind. Be smart about it. So you got to know your credit score. Very important. You also need to have about 12 to 24 months of your pay stubs. You need to have that accessible to you, at least your last 2 years of your IRS what is it your taxes. You need to have your last 2 years of your taxes available because they're going to need to take a look at that stuff. So there's different types of loans that are available. There's your most popular ones you're going to see is your VA loan, which is a veteran loan for people who are in the armed forces. You also have your FHA and your conventional. The difference between FHA and conventional is that FHA is a little bit more flexible with the requirements in order to be approved for the loan. They start at 580 for your credit score and up, whereas conventional, you're at 620 and up. Also, with FHA, you're going to find more of your like first-time home buyers, and conventional, you're going to see more people who have already purchased a home and they have like equity to put into this next home.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like conventional, your appraisal process is going to be more relaxed because FHA wise, they're very how do I say this, strict about the appraisal process for the home. Like if there's like chip paint or if the the electrical outlets are not the right ones. Like they'll make you change all that stuff. Like it can get a little crazy. But this is all stuff that your realtor is going to give you guidance on, and that's what's important. You don't need to be a professional or an expert in everything, but you need to know the right people to give you the right guidance.
Hmm.
Right? And
Hmm.
that's why I'm here today. Thank you for having me, sir.
I
So the
like
next
that. I
thing
like
is,
that. You don't. Yeah, go ahead. Keep
go
going.
ahead. So the
I
next
was.
part is your timeline.
Uh-huh.
And the timeline is important because if most likely you're moving out of somewhere and moving into somewhere else, right? So the timeline can be very delicate. You need to make sure that you're able to get this home and have some time to move into it before you're out of the previous home. So setting up your timeline, setting up when it is that you're getting your pre-approval from your lender, setting up when you're actually going to start looking for homes, and by when you need to place an offer in order to have the home by a certain time. All that is very delicate. And the realtor is going to help you put all that together so that we're on the right path.
Wow. That is good. That is good. You mentioned that you don't have to be an expert to get this whole process. So having that nice credit. So talk to me briefly about the credit, how it works with the credit cards. You mentioned that if you go to the store and you purchase something, make sure that you pay it off. I've also heard, I have friends that are bankers. They talk about the 70 30 rule, where is that you have to have at least 30% of your credit line spent, not going over that. So talk to us about how credit factor into home buying.
So I'll give you some basic guidance on your credit, but I'm not going to go into it in too much detail because that's something for example, the lender who's a professional in that field will be able to answer that in more specifics.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to your credit, something that's very important with the type of loan or the amount of loan that the lender and the bank will give you is your debt to income ratio.
Right.
So it's basically taking a look at how much money it is that you owe like every month to X amount of creditors. And then from there, they kind of factor in how much they believe that you should be able to afford for a home every month. So obviously, the more rent you have, the lower, or I'm sorry, the more debt you have, the lower your rent payment can be,
Right.
because they don't want to put you in a situation where you just can't pay anything, and then all of a sudden the bank is out of money because you can't pay your loan, right?
Okay.
So when it comes to your debts, obviously you want to pay them down, but the whole point about credit is that it's a history of you owing money and you being responsible and paying that money back. So you don't
Right.
want to ever get to a point where you're just not even using credit at all, because it's not going to help you out when you need to go get a loan. You need to strengthen that credit score so you
Mm-hmm.
can get a lower interest rate. And then in the longevity of that loan is where you're going to save money.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. And so walk me through that scenario I was talking to you about, the $400,000. I come to
Okay.
you, I come to your office. What is there anything else that I need to know prior to bringing out $400,000 in front of you?
If you brought $400,000 in front of me,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're planning to do that, if it's in a duffel bag or what the plan is, but I'd be impressed. Um, so it's a good question because it leads into other costs that you may have with purchasing your home.
Right.
So something that you have to consider is that when you're going to purchase your own home, you're going to have a down payment. Depending on which loan you have, it can range from like 3 to 5%.
Right.
And a misconception is that a lot of people think you need 20% of a down payment to purchase your home. And that's just not true. There are other options.
Okay.
So right now you're looking at about 3 to 5%, depending on how you qualify, okay? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's finances are different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also programs out there that allow you to put zero down as a down payment.
Right.
And you can also get a grant to cover your closing costs, which
Mm-hmm.
I'll go over in a moment. And that's all per you qualifying. And I'm working with a client right now that's actually doing the same. So I'm really happy to be helping them out. So that's your down payment for the home. Your closing costs are generally about 3%, and that's a good guess. It can range a little bit up or down, but your ballpark is about 3% of the purchase price of the home.
Okay.
So what are closing costs? Closing costs are like your taxes, the fees that get paid to the lender and the title company, your transfer tax, stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's taken out at the end of, like, when you're at your closing date. So the day that we sign all the papers, that's where the closing costs get paid, and then you get the keys in your hand. So that's something that not everybody's aware of, but it's generally about 3%. You can negotiate for the seller to pay for your closing costs. It's not the best option in every scenario, because if we're all going after a home that's very popular and it has a lot of offers, then I'm going to go with the offer that's the strongest, which most likely is the one that's not asking for closing costs.
Right.
But it's an option, and depending on what strategy you use, what home you're looking for, you can definitely try to negotiate that in, and that's where your realtor will give you guidance to see which homes best suit us getting those closing costs taken care of.
Okay.
The other cost you got to consider is you have your home inspection, which can be about $500, give or take, and it's $500 is a good range. However, depending on the size of the home, it can be a little bit bigger, and that's why I say it can fluctuate. So right after you place an offer on a home and it gets accepted, you go through the home inspection period, which the home inspector comes out and they give you like an instruction manual for your home. It's like the instruction manual you get when you buy a new car.
Right.
So they go through, they tell you basically the life cycle of everything. Is it in good shape, bad shape? Does it not work? Does it need to be fixed? How do you use this? How do you use that? It's awesome. And they go through and let you know, hey, this is broken, and hey, this is in great shape. That's the purpose of the home inspection. So that's one of those things, be present for it. And depending on your loan, you might have to get that done.
Okay.
You have your appraisal as well, which is another $500. Depends on the size of the home, so it can fluctuate up. The appraisal is done per the bank, and that's where somebody comes out and they actually tell you the value of the land and the property all together. And they compare that property to other properties in the same neighborhood, and different things that have sold. And then they're going to tell you, hey, this property is worth X amount. The purpose of that appraisal and why it's going to be something that has to get done per your loan
Right.
is that the bank wants to know if for whatever reason Alan's not able to pay his loan or he defaults, etc.
Right.
Would I be able to sell it and get my money back? And that's the purpose of the appraisal.
Okay.
So far we're looking at about $1,000, right, in your home inspection and your appraisal, and you're looking at 3% of the home value for your closing costs. And then you're looking at your down payment, which can range from 3.5% to 5%. And if you qualify for a first-time home buyer program, it can be
Right.
0%. So you
Okay.
have different options.
Okay. All right. So, and you mentioned that there are different loan options out there. I've heard people talk about the USDA loan, which depending on where you get your home, if you are in the rural areas or
Mhm.
in the urban areas, they may or may not ask you for a down payment. And so where is this myth come from about this 20% down payment?
So 20% down payment is something that's very old school, and it's out of the way, and it's gone.
Okay.
Those percentages have been lowered to make home ownership more attainable. Because if
Okay.
you think about it, let's say right now, for example, your average home price in Falls Church is
Right.
somewhere in like the 600,000, something like that, is your
Mhm.
average home price, and that's for like within the last like 30 days, so September, right? The
Right.
month of September. Um, 20% of that is what? It's like somewhere between 100 and 200,000, right?
Yep.
And then realistically, who has that money just laying in the bank account to go out and get a home? Some people do, a lot of us don't. And that's why
Right.
those percentages were dropped to make it more attainable for people. And that's why
Okay.
Virginia has that great program, is the USDA loan. And there's
Uh-huh.
other programs as well that allow you to put zero down, which makes home ownership like very attainable.
That is very scary for a 20% down payment. That's a lot of money. It's very different from a 3% down payment.
Exactly. But let me tell you something. So the great thing about home ownership, and why if you're renting, you need to move on from that life and you need to go buy yourself a home. And here's why. You start building equity, right?
Uh-huh.
So the money that I'm paying to rent a home, it goes into somebody else's pocket, and it's not building any equity for me in my life, right?
Right.
But if I own a home, every time I pay rent, obviously some of it goes to interest and all that stuff, but the rest of it goes back into my pocket, right? My principal payment. And then I start building equity. What happens if my home goes up, $40,000, $100,000, etc., in the next few years? Well, that's money that I just built on because I own my own home. And then if you're gonna buy your first home, it doesn't always need to be your dream home. You could, it's a starter home, right? That's what people call it. You
Right.
could purchase a home that you're like, I can live in this, it's okay. But in the future, I want to get the one that has the pool and the deck and it has the garage and all this stuff on the corner lot, like all that beautiful stuff, right? You
That's
could get
right.
that later.
Right.
And that's when you start building that equity in that first home. And now you have a big down payment you can put down on a loan, a much bigger loan to get that home that you really dream about. And that's what people don't think about initially is I can start from here and then later down the line, I can have that big sexy home I was thinking about up here.
Right. 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 And you started talking briefly about the the next question that I wanted to ask you. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages for owning a home compared to renting a home or condos? What are some of the different pros and cons associated with home buying and then renting a home? You already mentioned some of them because when you buy a home, you're owning the equity of the house and your house could go up. And also, you mentioned that you could start small and then while you're in that home, you start saving to go big and then having that permanent house. So the first one doesn't have to be the destination. The first one can be a starter for you to settle down and then save for the future. So are there any other advantages and disadvantages compared to home ownership and comparing that to
Mm.
renting?
All right, so there were several questions jammed into that one. So
Yeah.
let's start rocking and rolling with what's on top of my head. All right, so for example, and I'm glad you brought up the equity question. My parents bought their home in Falls Church, live in Falls Church over in the West Lawn neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
and they bought it in the year 2000. And right now, 20 years later, it has doubled in price.
Wow.
Is that the same for everybody, every neighborhood, every situation? No, but it is an example of how that equity builds, especially in the area that we're in, because we are in a bubble compared to the rest of the country. Because that we have Washington right here and all these government jobs, a lot of things that happen to the economy don't impact us as severely as it does the rest of the country. We are in a bubble. We're protected by having Washington, D.C. right there. So you need to understand that. That's why our housing market is hot.
Okay.
Now, renting versus buying. When you look at renting, the difficult thing about renting is number one, every time you make a payment, you're putting that payment in somebody else's pocket and not yours. That's number one. The second thing is, and something that's more convenient for some people, is that if you have an issue with your property, a pipe burst, you have an electrical problem, etc., you have a landlord that takes care of those things.
Hmm.
And if you own your own home, anything happens, it's on you. You need to know the electrician, the plumber. If a roof falls on your house, you need to know who to call, right? And that
Hmm.
happened to my parents. We had a pine tree fall on top of their home. That was years ago. But that's on you. And that's you have to have funds to cover any sort of damages or just crazy mishaps that might happen at your home.
Hmm.
So next question. Um, oh, and I also find that a lot of renters, a reason why they rent is because they're not sure about the home buying process or if they qualify, if it's attainable, but also they're just not sold on living in one location for so long because it
Hmm.
seems like such a big commitment. But if you think about it, you could buy a home and live there for 5, maybe 10 years, something like that, and then move on to another home. If you really like moving like that. But some
Right.
people just want to settle in. It's not the right life for everybody, but you can keep moving and moving and moving, and that's okay. And if you're living in an apartment, you're probably doing the same thing because you're bouncing around from who's charging me a little bit less, or maybe let me move to a nicer neighborhood, but you're still not putting that money back in your pocket. And
Right.
that's the issue that people need to see. Now, when you're looking at your homes, which are like single family homes, which is
Hmm.
just you have your structure, your yard, this is your house, right? Compared to a townhouse and a condo, what are the differences? So, in condos and also townhomes, you're going to have a condo or a HOA fee.
Right.
And sometimes in townhomes, you're going to have a condo and a HOA fee. So, those cover the different amenities that come with that property or that neighborhood that you live in.
Right.
So, different amenities. What are those? You could have like a pool, a gym, walking paths, a dog park. There could be like basketball courts, tennis courts.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you live, like I know some areas out in like Lake Ridge, which is in Woodbridge, you have
Mm-hmm.
water rights to the actual river. So like you have an area where you're able to like pull up a kayak or a boat or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
you have access, right? So there's different things that they offer, and that's why you're paying that condo or HOA fee. Now that is separate from your mortgage payment, and you have to keep that in mind. All right. When you own a home, you don't have those amenities, but because now you have more money to pay for home,
Mm-hmm.
which is the money that you're not paying for a condo or HOA fee, you're
Right.
able to afford a bigger home. For the
Hmm.
same price, I can afford a bigger home or a slightly smaller townhouse or a slightly smaller condo, but they're all the same price. The difference is that condo and HOA fee.
Huh. Okay.
And the cool thing is, some places, like if you have an HOA fee and you live in like a townhouse where obviously you have a front and backyard, some of them include that they come out and they mow your front and backyard, which is awesome. You know, that's like your pinky up living right there.
Yeah.
But it depends on where you live.
That is huge. That is huge.
Yeah.
And so talk to us about what kind of realtor are you? Do you represent the home buyer and the seller together, or you only represent one part of the process? And can you talk to us about that for realtors that represent both the seller and the buyer?
Okay, good. I'm going to try to interpret the question the way I think the way it came across in my head.
Okay.
So I represent both sellers and buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are different laws in different states depending on the state on whether or not I'm able to represent, like, you're buying this home here.
Right.
Can I represent both the seller and the buyer for the same home? Now there's different laws per states that say whether you can or can't do that. And there's
Okay.
also ethic laws that, like, for example, here it's in my personal brokerage, like
Mm-hmm.
we don't practice that. It's just not a good idea. But you can here in the state of Virginia. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why is when I represent you, I look out for your best interest.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to look out for your best interest in the same deal as somebody else's best interest when you guys are fighting against each other, right?
Right. Pretty much.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
do represent buyers and sellers, but
Okay.
separately in separate transactions.
Okay. All
Does that
right.
answer
That's
your question?
It does. It does because I was reading online that it is important to have a realtor that knows both sides of the coin so that they provide you the best information. And so that's
Hmm.
where that question was coming from.
And it all comes down to negotiating and what you
Okay.
can pick up to help you on your end, right?
Right.
So, for example, if you go see a home, and this isn't always the case, but sometimes people have like their camera or their Alexa on or whatever, and they're kind of recording what you're saying. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to be paranoid. I don't want you to think that this happens at every home, but it can happen. And that's something where you're looking at a home and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this home. I want to move into it tomorrow. This is my dream home. Well, guess what? If I represent that seller, I know that this buyer really wants that home,
Mm-hmm.
and I can negotiate a higher price or just be very hard on you because I know you're going to pay no matter what it is that I ask for
Right.
because you want that home. You have that emotional attachment. And it's different things that happen. What if I'm the buyer and I happen to know that, hey, this seller needs to get out of this home in 30 days or else he's in a bad spot? So he's motivated, right? If that's the case, then I know I can offer you a lower price and I could probably win that home.
Right.
So there's different things that happen, and you have to be aware, and you just have to be an expert negotiator.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. That's very important. So that's a very important skill to have as a realtor.
Ears open, eyes open, always be aware, and every detail is important.
Okay. And talk to us about you have this home that I'm interested in buying with my money, the $400,000 I mentioned to you. What information do you tell me about that home? Do you have the record, the history? If there are ghosts in that house in the past, do you have all that information available to give to me?
That's a good question. All right, so everything that we have available is off of public record and
Uh-huh.
also what's posted on the MLS system.
Mm-hmm.
MLS system is a search engine that realtors have access to and only realtors have access to
Okay.
look at properties and to post properties saying that they're available.
Okay.
And obviously, we have access to the public record. So whatever you post, if there's something that's missing, I can look at the public record and see if anything contrasts. Um, Now, there's different things pertaining to like fair housing laws that we can and
Hmm.
can't disclose. So, for
Okay.
example, like if somebody has like passed away unfortunately in that home, I'm not required to disclose that.
Oh wow, no way.
Yeah, I'm not required to disclose that. Um, if there are sex offenders in the neighborhood, I'm
Uh-huh.
not required to disclose that. However, there are websites that you can go to where you can just put in an address and it'll show you like where the sex offenders are. And you'd be very surprised how many of them are that there are. You'd be very surprised.
Wow, that is scary. Are you that
Yeah.
is scary.
Mhm.
Wow. Is there anything else that we need to know before I actually take out the pen to sign on that piece of paper that says I am the owner of this house? What other information do you normally tell me?
Besides everything that we've gone over, I'd
Hmm.
say take a look at the neighborhood that you want to live in. And there's
Okay.
different websites that you can use to get
Hmm.
information from that,
Okay.
just to make sure that you're when you buy a home, you're not just buying that physical piece of land and property. You're buying a neighborhood, you're buying a lifestyle. So make sure that where you're going to live, it suits you and it fits you. If you need public transit, make sure that we're by the metro or by the bus stop. If you need to be somewhere close to like you like walking and hiking and all that stuff, make sure you're by those kind of trails. Or if you like to live in a place where everything's easily accessible, like for
Hmm.
example, the Mosaic in over in Maryfield, where you could just walk to Target and to all these different shops and restaurants. If you want to live that kind of lifestyle, then make sure you're aware that that's there and that's available because it's more than just buying a house. The last thing you want to do is buy a home that's in the wrong neighborhood for you and you're just not happy.
Can you speak to us briefly about the market? You mentioned the bubble earlier. How is the market looking like today in our area?
Okay. So the market's going to vary, and but I'll give you some general statistics.
Okay.
The reason why I say it varies is because obviously the market's going to be more busy in like Arlington and Alexander, which is closer to DC in the city, than
Hmm.
it is out in Manassas or South Riding, etc.
Right.
The market's also very busy in Woodbridge because the average price in Woodbridge is I think it's about like $360,000, and
Hmm.
that's just about the range that the majority of your first-time home buyers are in. You're in
Okay.
between like 250 to like 400.
Hmm.
So that's why the market in Woodbridge is so hot. There's like multiple offers on homes, and everybody's trying to go out there and live there because with that budget, 250 to 400, you're not finding too many things out in Falls Church, Arlington, Alexandria. And if you do, it's going to be a smaller property.
Hmm.
So right now it is a seller's market. And what that means is that there's not a lot of homes on the market compared to the amount of buyers. So buyers are coming out and they're fighting for these homes. They're putting in like multiple offers and people are just scratching and clawing to purchase these homes. And the reason why that is because the interest rates are at an all-time low. And
Hmm.
they're going to stay that way for a while. And the reason why I say that is because we're not 100% sure when things are going to improve from the coronavirus. And that's why those interest rates are so low. Will it happen in the next few months? I don't know. Will it happen in a year? I don't know. And even, everybody you see, the scientists and all those people, they're not sure either. They don't have a full grasp on it. So with my prediction, as long as COVID is the way it is, and obviously we will improve at some point, but those interest rates are going to stay low and the market's going to stay very similar. Now, how fast things are moving, that'll change. So, Falls Church, we're at about 12 days is how long a home will be on the market
Hmm.
and then off the market, which is fast.
12 days.
12 days. I used to live in Illinois and it's like 90 days.
Yeah, that's different. So you have to make up your mind within 2 weeks. Otherwise,
Exactly.
somebody else will.
And that's for a well-priced home. And the reason why I say that is like everybody has an emotional attachment to their home.
Right.
And whatever price you see in your head isn't always the same price that the market tells you. And a,
Hmm.
a home is only worth what the market tells you it's worth. So like I can look at this home that's worth, let's say 500,000,
Right.
but in my head, I'm like, man, I raised all my kids here. I have memories in the backyard for all my family picnics and get-togethers. This home is $1 million. Well, guess what, buddy? I can look online and tell you homes that are very similar to your home that sold, and it's not at $1 million. So there's a difference. As long as your home is well priced to the market, you're at about 12 days, for example, in Falls Church. And I know at some point it was at like maybe like 9 or so days in Arlington, some point over the summertime. Like it was
Wow.
moving fast. There's actually a home that went on the market yesterday in Fairfax, and today it is under contract. I was looking in the home myself for a client. I made a call, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it went on the market yesterday. We already accepted a contract today." Oh, nice.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. You mentioned that when you were describing the market, you mentioned that it is a seller's market right now. What is the flip coin to that? How do you know when it's a buyer's market?
Okay, so when it's a buyer's market, the easiest way to tell is number one, how long homes are sitting on the market,
Mhm.
and also how much people are paying based on the listing price for the home. So I think for the most part, on average, you're looking at 101% is what people are paying in like Northern Virginia as a whole
Mhm.
for homes. So if the home is listed at, let's say, 500,000, then people
Right.
are paying 101% of that 500,000, which means they're paying above listing price, right?
Mhm.
And that only happens when people are fighting for these homes. They're a hot commodity.
Right.
So when it is a buyer's market, there's a lot of inventory and not a lot of buyers. So these buyers have the upper hand. You can negotiate a lower price for the home. The homes are probably going to sit on the market a little bit longer. And
Hmm.
that's where you can see that in the market, and you know, hey, I got the upper hand. I can go flex on these sellers now.
That's right. That's right. Okay. That is awesome. And so on a regular market, whatever that means, how long when you work with a client, how long does it normally take to get to that closing date? And how
Perfect.
stressful is the closing date?
Two very good questions. Um, so when you start looking for a home, how long it takes you to find a home is a different question, because obviously some people are going to be pickier than others. And if you're looking for a very specific neighborhood, it all depends on availability.
Right.
But what I can tell you, and what's more consistent, is when you are under contract. So that means I placed an offer for this house, and the
Hmm.
seller said, "Hey, I accept your offer."
Right.
Generally speaking, it's about 30 days to 45 days. Now, why does this fluctuate? Some banks work faster to fund the loan, to fund that money, that check, than
Hmm.
others. So here's some advice. In a market like the market we're in today, do not use any of these internet lenders. Don't use a Rocket Mortgage or none of that stuff. And the reason why is, number one, they're very difficult to get a hold of because you got to call these people and talk to them on the phone.
Right.
And number two, they're going to take longer to fund that loan. So if I'm looking at different offers for my home, and I see your offer that has Rocket Mortgage, and then I see another offer that's identical, but it says XYZ lender, that's a local lender right down the street, I'm taking XYZ lender because he's probably going to close quicker, and I'm going to be able to communicate with him a lot easier. You also have to keep in mind that these credit unions, which offer like great rates for you as a member, they take longer to close. They take a lot longer to close. So that's another thing where, unfortunately, if you're in the current market and you have like Navy Federal Credit Union, or et cetera, they could take up to those 45 days. And then the question is, do I want my money in 30 or 45 days when everything else for these two competing offers are very similar? I'll
Right.
take my money in 30.
Hmm. Wow.
Now, I might have got a sidetrack. What was the rest of that question?
Yeah, I forgot what the question was actually, but I was asking about
For
the
closing, right?
yep, the closing. How stressful is the closing date?
Okay, so let's say on average, so we're looking at about 30 days, for
Right.
example.
Hmm.
So I sign the contract and it gets accepted. We're under contract. It generally takes about 30 calendar days to close. It can take more, it can take less. So in those 30 days, a lot of things happen. And that's why it's very important for you to build your team, the lender and the realtor, right? They handle all of that stuff for you. Like if you looked at a sheet of things that got done, you'd be like, oh my God, this is stressful. But it's not, because you have people on your side that manage that timeline, make
Right.
sure that the right papers get submitted and signed on time,
Hmm.
all that stuff. And the crazy thing is, I don't get paid and the lender doesn't get paid unless if we close and you get the keys in your hand. So we're very motivated to make sure that all this stuff gets done on time and properly. So for you, for the most part, what you're doing is you're submitting paperwork, signing forms, getting the home inspection appraisal done. Um, Everything else is managed by us.
Wow.
So kick back, relax, start planning your trips to IKEA, wherever it is you want to go.
That
And then
leads
we'll
me
get you to closing day. We get you there.
that leads me to the next question actually. Do you have, as the realtor, do you have connections to other partners, like, I don't know, people that cut grass or something like landscape? Do you also work with, say I don't have the $400,000 I was talking about, but I come to you, I say, Alan, I'm interested in buying a home. Do you walk me through the process of obtaining that loan from the lender? And then do you have partners that you work with to make sure that my whole process is a good process and I'm able to move into that home safely?
Yes. So that's a two-part question. So first, when it comes to referrals, so as a realtor, I have tons of referrals for different people that do different things.
Right.
Whether you're looking for, a cable guy or some or a plumber, there's even companies that they go ahead and they switch all your utilities over to the new property, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to deal with that headache. Movers, painters, if you want to do an addition to the home or renovation, I have a lot of people that I work with that I recommend. But number one, what you have to understand is I don't get any sort of referral fee or any benefit from giving you these referrals. It's people
Okay.
that I know that do good work, and that's the reason why I recommend them to you. But
Right.
you have the freedom to use whoever it is that you like and trust.
Right.
But that's every realtor. We have a list of people that we enjoy working with, and that's why we recommend them to you. The
Wow.
second part of that
Okay.
question was, remind me, what was the second part?
Do you work? The second part is, do you work with them to get a loan if initially they don't have uh, a clear picture of what they're looking for?
So perfect. We'll go right back to how realtors and lenders get paid. Like we don't get paid unless if we close on a deal for you. So initially, if you're not ready to buy a home right now,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're not financially ready to buy a home right now, we set you on a path to success. We tell you XYZ needs to get done in order for us to be able to do a home purchase by this date.
Right.
And if you're not ready, we can keep working with you. There's credit repair companies. There's a lot of things, but you need to understand that these resources, they're not going to just, stumble upon your lap. You need to reach out and talk to your professionals and find out your situation. You need to use these resources to help you.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who just financially aren't ready yet, or the credit isn't like great. Reach out to a lender, reach out to your realtor, and they'll set you on the right path. And the biggest thing is getting the help. Because if you don't have the answers right now and you're just looking stuff up on Google, that can only get you so far. You got to talk to somebody that really knows what's going on and how to do this stuff.
Wow. That's amazing. Hey, Alan, you've given us so much information. I'm like taking notes and I already finished one page. I could flip to the next page and take more notes, but you've provided us valuable information. Before we get to the last part where we've asked you to write a letter to the younger Alan, is there anything else that we needed to know as we go into this most important decision of our lives of buying a home or investing in a home? Are there any other things that, from my point of view, the homeowner or the potential homeowner, is there any other information that I need to know that we haven't already discussed?
I think something that's very important, and a lot of people don't consider it unless if you set the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking for a home, remember that that home wasn't built or made or staged for you. It was built, made, and staged for whoever lives there right now. So when you
Hmm.
look at a home and you're like, man, there's like XYZ that I would like to change, or I'm not happy with. Well, you gotta weigh how important and how big of a project it is. If we're just
Right.
talking about some paint or just something that's minimal, then that's not as big of a deal as you having to knock down walls and renovate the whole basement and the whole kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just understand when you walk into that home, they didn't build it for you, but there's definitely things you can do to change it and make it your own home.
Wow.
And that's what we're here to guide you on.
That is a powerful statement. That
And
is,
that's the truth. People don't get it. They're going to a home and
that's
they'll be
right.
like, I don't like that wall color. Well, that's what they liked. You can change it to what you like once you live here.
That's it's it's very tiny, but it's very important because
Bingo.
it's psychological, because people would actually make a decision based on the color of a home when they could buy the house and change the color and do whatever they want for
It's a minimal change.
it.
But
Wow.
you have to weigh the pros or the cons. Am I gonna
Right.
have to build a new garage? That's expensive project. Or am I gonna have to, I don't know, like redo the flooring or just add in different light fixtures? Pros and cons.
Right. Wow.
What's more important to you?
That's right. All right. So the end of the episode is coming now, and we have asked you to write a letter to the younger Alan, who was not a realtor. So now that you're a realtor, you're a father, you're a husband, you are working in the market to change lives of people. You are definitely impacting people's lives by working them through the process of making one of the biggest decisions in their lives, and that is owning a home. Looking back in your whole life journey, what are some of the things that you would tell to that young Alan coming up?
I'm glad you asked. And I guess something, and I emailed you this letter as well, but one of the most important things that I wrote on there is actually a one of these like laws that we have here at work.
Mm-hmm.
And it says change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And I find that important because it's all about perspective. You can you can either choose to look at the problems or look at the actual plan and how you can change it so you don't have those problems anymore. And that separates a lot of people. And if you give things a more positive outlook, you're going to get more positive results.
Hmm. Wow. It reminds me of, I was talking to a mentee of mine. He said, pessimists see problems in every situation, compared to a optimist who sees opportunity in every situation. So it's always about that perspective, thinking and looking at things differently.
It changes your whole life because it just changes your attitude about things. And there's going to be days where things get you down. Like this is our third time doing this podcast today, right?
That's right.
But it's cool. You know why? Because we're still putting out a great product, and I'm spending this time with you and everybody else watching, and I'm happy and grateful to be here. So we live, we learn, and we improve, and we move on.
That's awesome. I love it, man. I love how you tied it down. I appreciate you for coming in. And people that are listening and people that are going to be listening later on this episode, they can find you on Facebook by going onto Facebook and look up your name, Alan DeGracia hyphen the realtor. Again, that's Alan DeGracia hyphen the realtor is how they can find you on Facebook, or they can also email you. The best way to contact you is via email at alandegracia@kw.com. The email again is alandegracia@kw.com. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude?
Oh, you guys can contact me via phone. Phone number is 571-216-8624. And that's my cell. Like you can feel free to call me, text me, etc. at any time. And I'm more than happy to help you guys out. Even if it's just a simple question, I don't mind at all. Or if you just want to pop in and say hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This man is a credible man. I trust him, and that is why I brought him into this episode to share with us information about home buying. And if you are in the need of purchasing your first home, you know exactly who to call. It's Alan DeGracia. Thank you, Alan, for coming into the episode.